Look at that.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the full committee hearing for the House Governmental Affairs Committee, and I'm going to ask someone to open us up in prayer. Representative Gullett is going to open us up in prayer. What number are you? 11. All right, go ahead.
Bow your heads. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the ability to be here. Give us the strength and the wisdom to do what's right for Georgia and for our constituents. Bless all those here, and in your name we pray, amen.
Amen. All right, we're going to start with Senate Bill 222. There's just been a couple of small changes to it, and Senator Burns is here, and Chairman Gaines may jump in whenever you're ready for him. Bringing it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. We appreciate the opportunity to come back together and make some adjustments and improvements to SB 222. In conversations with the chair and also with Representative Gaines, I'm aware of the changes if I understand it correctly, but I'm going to defer to Representative Gaines to point out the line numbers. That's right. Okay, I believe I'm on line 45. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? We adjusted the nominal value on line 45 from $200 to $500. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the other additional change was in section 2, which, if I understand correctly, allows the Secretary of State to continue as an ex officio member of the State Election Board. Is that correct?
That is correct. Those
All
are the
right.
two changes.
Those are the only two changes that I am aware of. Does the committee have any questions? And that's, I'm looking for that line number. I believe it was...
122 and 123.
Thank you. 122 and 123. Thank you, because in the previous version, I believe those lines were struck. Is that correct? And what this did is it removed the removal of the strike. So on line 122, the Secretary of State shall be an ex officio non-voting member of the board. And I believe that's the only other change.
Chairman Burns, There was one other change.
One other change?
And I believe it was in H around line 143, where something was removed. Investigative authority by the board.
The point that out again, please. In section H.
I believe there was some language deleted in
Okay.
section H.
Let's go back to the. Yep. Section 3. GH. Section H, the board shall have the power to appoint an executive director who shall be a full-time employee of the board. The executive director shall serve at the pleasure of the board, and the board shall, in its discretion, appoint and fix the compensation of the director.
Our legislative council's reviewing now. He's going to point out
Good.
that
If
change.
you'll point out any changes because of the
But the
comparison.
other two changes were the other two.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and take a question or two from the committee, starting with Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This comes from the Muskogee County Election Supervisor. The line numbers are wrong now, but her question is, a common practice among election officials is to donate items we no longer use to counties that might need those items. For example, Cobb County offered the black bags used to transport printers and ballot marking devices to any county willing to pick them up. Muskogee asked for 150 of those bags to use in elections process. The value is I'm assuming over 500 now. Would this constitute a felony? Additionally, we picked up voting carts and plastic tables that were offered on a first-come, first-served basis. So their concern is that they can't even.
May I suggest that any county who has materials or equipment that they would like to provide to other communities do that through the Secretary of State's office and the State Election Board, and that would allow those kinds of transactions to occur, because they could donate them to the State Election Board or to the state, and the state could then reallocate those resources.
Okay. I hope they have the resources to manage that.
All right, our Ledge Council is going to explain this third change to us. Mr. Morelli.
Yes. So the third change was removing what had been subparagraph L at the end of section 2, where the board had the power, where the state election board had the power to hire investigators.
Right.
What's been deleted is taking out the authorization for the state election board to hire investigators, so they would continue to rely on the investigators of the Secretary of State's office instead of hiring their own investigators.
Could you provide the line numbers that were removed? Is that was in the prior sub?
Yes, sir. It came after 176.
Came after 176.
Yeah. There was a subparagraph there, or a subsection there that's been deleted.
That has been deleted, and it related to the State Election Board having investigators, and in this case, by removing it, the investigators would remain with the Secretary of State. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the changes and look forward to supporting it at the committee's discretion.
All right, and so those are the three changes. Pretty easy to understand, I believe, and so we'll take a couple more questions before we entertain a motion. Representative Anulowicz.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for offering some of these changes, because I know there was a lot of discussion about this. The Secretary of State's office, to what my colleague Representative Roberts was saying, have we confirmed that the Secretary of State's office has either the interest or the capacity to take on being a clearinghouse for these donations of equipment between one county elections board to another?
SB 202 provided for donations to be made through the State Election Board. That hasn't changed. Whether it is in monetary form or in materials or property, I think the State Election Board has the ability and the power to handle that transaction. I've had numerous conversations with the Secretary of State and with the State Election Board, I believe, as your committee has, and I would defer to their knowledge and expertise.
So to help me with my clarification of making sure I understand this correctly, would the donations go to the Secretary of State's office or to the State Elections Board?
Ultimately, it'd be the State Election Board, and then the Secretary of State would actually implement the process that the State Election Board establishes.
Is this something that this new executive director position would be in charge of? Would be handling like the donated ballot bags?
That would be an issue for the State Election Board to determine.
Thank you.
Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here I am.
I know.
I don't have any questions about your bill, but I would like to bring something to your attention. This committee passed a bill out first of the session on chain of custody.
I believe that was HB 17. Is that correct?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Chairman?
We passed that bill last year, and it got up there, and then, of course, the lieutenant governor had at that time. We don't know what happened. It kind of poofed, disappeared. I would like to ask for your consideration that when this bill comes back to y'all, and it winds up going into a conference committee, that the House bill, the provisions of chain of custody, be included at that time to make it a more wholesome bill.
I appreciate the chairman's input, and we'll certainly take it under consideration.
Thank you. That's all I can ask for.
All right, Representative Alalier.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator, great seeing you again.
Good to see you again.
I wanted to ask you a question first about the increase in that in-kind donation threshold from 200, I believe it was originally, to 500, and what?
Actually, it was 100,
100,
200, and now to 5.
Got it. What was your reasoning to landing on 500 versus 1,000, 1,500, if indeed the items were in kind?
I would suggest that the in-kind items would not be covered by this provision because they are channeled through the State Election Board. And so items that are provided to the state, for the state to reallocate, actually there's no restriction on the value of what can be contributed through the state of Georgia.
And your understanding of the process, and I know Representative Anulowicz and Roberts were both speaking to this, is hypothetically if I'm donating goods and I live down in, I don't know, Valdosta, you want said individual to drive those goods or mail those goods to?
I would suggest that that's for the State Election Board and the Secretary of State to determine the process. I would certainly hope that we would not be physically moving things from point A to point B to have to return it to point C. But that's their decision to make, given the authority they have.
And one quick comment, Chair. Thank you. I'm going to direct folks' attention to lines 46 through 48. And I know an amendment was brought up in subcommittee regarding the penalty. And again, you break the law, you face a penalty. A felony, 1 year of jail time, a $10,000 minimum fine is incredibly harsh compared to other breaks from the law. And so I'm not sure, Chair, if an amendment can be taken. I just want to put it out there that the amendment that was made was to strike the felony to make it a misdemeanor and to make the fine no more than $1,000 to make sure that it was commensurate with the crime.
I recall the discussion at a prior meeting. I believe we already spoke to that issue, and the realization of what we want is no fines and no jail time. What we want is people to follow Georgia law. And if I remember correctly, the amendment was offered and it failed, and I find that the discussion has been resolved.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
All right, we're going to take one more question before entertaining a motion. Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon.
I would ask if you would consider, if this bill does go to conference committee, to increasing the number of boxes to 10 per county.
Would you point out the line number you're referring to, please?
There's not a line number. I'm just asking if
The number of boxes
mhm,
for
for ballots,
ballot boxes?
ballot boxes. Mm-hmm.
I don't believe this bill addresses the number of boxes, does it?
No, it doesn't. I was just asking you to consider maybe
Consideration.
because of the fact that this bill is, I guess, making corrections for things in SB 202.
Well, I would suggest it's not making corrections, it's making clarifications. And then there is also another bill, SB 129, which has a number of provisions in it. I appreciate your interest and request, and we'll be happy to take it in consideration, but I don't see the number of, I assume we're talking about drop boxes.
Yes.
I don't see where the number of drop boxes is germane to this discussion in this particular bill.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody on the committee wish to make a motion? All right. We have a motion to pass and a second. Any discussion? See none. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say no. No. All right. The bill carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. If Senate Rules Chairman Matt Brass would come up for Senate Bill 215. We're being asked for a hand count of the last vote. I believe it's clearly passed, but we'll do a hand count for all those in favor of the last bill. And the opposed? Okay. All right. Thank you all. All right. Senator Brass. Thank you. All right. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got you SB 215, and let me first kind of tell you the intent here in the problem is we've got it's been state law for many years that a government official could remove their names and from public record, and there was a process to do that. A couple years ago, I came in and added federal employees. We already had city, county, and state level employees were allowed to do it. Added federal a couple years ago because I've several federal marshals, and we're near the airport, so we got a lot of federal folks around our area. Well, with growing cyber crimes and just a lot of information out there on the web, on the internet these days, we simply are trying to allow public officials to remove their names from Q Public, and those are the county-run websites where you can look up where someone lives. And we've seen instances really over the last several years. People are putting information out there that really just doesn't need to be out there. And with the access to the World Wide Web, it's a growing problem, and we're simply trying to stop it. So the intent is to allow, whether it be a law enforcement or any form of government public official, to allow them to simply remove their names from Q Public. We've got a couple of counties out there that just weren't abiding by what we had, and so...
Do you, I should have asked you this to begin with. I thought you had the same, so we were looking at.
Yes, LC 365567S.
Yes.
So it has changed since it left the Senate. Again, I wanted to kind of describe the intent. Representative Gaines has worked with me on trying to accomplish the solution that I am seeking, and really, he probably can speak to the changes a little better than I, if you'll allow, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Vice Chairman Gaines.
Thank you, and thank you, Vice Chairman Brass. We appreciate
Thank you, Vice Chairman Gaines.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. But appreciate your good work on this issue. And I know the chairman talked about his intent in the bill. So what we worked together on was this substitute that applies to law enforcement officers, that they would be able to have their home address removed from Q Public, which was the intent of the reason for the original bill. And so that's what this legislation does. By September of this year, requires local governments to have a form for law enforcement officers to request the removal of their person identifiable information, which would be the residential address or phone number, or and from the individual spouse, and so that's what the substitute does before you. September 1, 2024. Which I don't know if we wanted to speed that up. I'm sure that would be, if the committee was
I'm
interested
good
in
with
that. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Gaines. Representative Saines.
Thank you, Chairman Brass, for bringing the bill. This would this would only apply to officers who own a home, correct? Because those are the only ones listed in the Q Public database.
That's correct. If it would be for them, or if the house is listed in their spouse, is the intent.
So we're in retrospect encouraging home ownership by this if someone is not doing so because they don't want to be listed in public databases.
Quite possible, yes.
Appreciate it. Is this an appropriate time for a motion?
We normally hear bills in a subcommittee first, and since we weren't able to do that because of time, we've got two members of the public that wish to speak to the bill, and so we'll do that first. And we do have a question from the committee over here. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is just, could someone explain Q Public to me, the Q Public database?
I can take a stab at that. So if you go on any county website in Georgia, you can access property records through that website.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could simply go in and type in your name, or if I found, say you had your home listed under a spouse, and I knew the name of that, which is easy to find on Facebook or whatever, I could go on this website and I could look up every property you own in that particular county, and then through reasonable deduction, I could figure out exactly where you live. We had Representative Lynn Smith just had protesters at her home just a few weeks ago, and they more than likely they found her address through Q Public.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair. So, is this so if I was trying to do a deed search,
Mm-hmm.
is that the kind of database you're talking about?
So deed search, you can actually go do that at the local courthouse, or you can, if you're doing a deed search online, yes, you can do it through Q Public, is my understanding. So in that instance, these law enforcement in this case, they wouldn't be actually removing their names from that. So
Okay.
if you were, let's say you're a surveyor and you want to go search for this property owner and search for that deed, you could go down to the courthouse like we did for many years, hundreds of years. But when Q Public came about, yes, it made it very accessible and very easy for people to do these deed searches and do things like that. But there's a security issue that is now involved, and unfortunately, there's always bad actors in really everything we do, and the bad actors in this case are taking what is a good product and they've made it bad, and that is the purpose of this legislation.
And this applies to, well, it applies to officers who have the power of arrest?
To law enforcement officers,
Okay.
as we've defined in lines 13 through 16.
Okay. So it wouldn't have protected Chairman Smith in that instance.
Well, so actually the current law is she could have had her name removed but it would be up to that county as to whether hers would come off of Q Public or not. Again, all counties but 2 would have abided by that, or have
Okay.
abided by that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chairman Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill. I think it's an important bill because, to your point, not only can you, on the Q Public site, you can go find deed information, but it's not really the search. You have to go onto the clerk's website to actually pull up the deed, and you can still search for that on the clerk's website. The Q Public is frequently used as a entrance into that because they frequently have the deed and deed book and page number of the vesting deed of the current owner. But the thing to me that's significant about Q Public is it has the address, which is not on the clerk's website generally, and they've got a picture of the house, so you can make sure you're going to the right house for whatever purpose you have. So I think that's, for a law enforcement official or officer, I think it's vital that they have the right to remove their name, and I thank you for bringing the bill. I think it's a very important piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Over to Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to thank Chairman Brass and Representative Gaines for working on this. I think the bill does what it's intended to do. The one issue that I had spoke with Representative Gaines about was defining the kind of relief the court would give in a situation where a court had to step in and make sure this was done correctly. And we actually had, working with Representative Gaines, actually had a
I'll turn you up a little bit.
actually worked with Representative Gaines to come up with a amendment that would simply define the relief that the court could give in this situation to make it clear what that was. I texted a copy of it to Stewart, so I think he has it now, but it was simply miscommunication on my part. I thought Representative Gaines was bringing the copy, but at the appropriate time when we get in the posture, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer it, and I can read it to the committee. It's fairly short.
All right, we've got a couple more questions we'll get to. Representative Gaines.
And I just wanted to clarify Representative Fleming's point. As I understand it, would strengthen the bill to put in an ability if the county did not actually follow the law that we've outlined here, would give some relief for the law enforcement officer. Is that right?
I think that's a fair description.
All right, Representative Anulowicz.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I love me a public record search, and this is the first time I've heard of Q Public. Who? Yeah, I just go to the counties when I'm being nosy. Yeah. So that's what I know. I didn't realize that. I just go to individual counties when I'm being nosy about somebody. So is this and this is just is this a public company? Is this a private company?
I would assume it's a third-party
I would
private.
assume
really
so
don't
too. Yeah.
I don't know, but I do know every time I've ever gone to a county website, and I'm honestly I utilize it for my business. I have to go. I'm a roofer, and so I like to look at the building. I like to know where it is. You know, I can get dimensions off of there, but I don't use it in a bad way. But so when I'm searching, I go to
And being nosy, I'm not
yes.
Senator. Are you saying being just a nosy person is a bad
I'm
thing?
not using it to stalk people, but you do what you want. But no, in all seriousness, if you go to a county website, or every county website that I've been to, if you hit the property search button, it takes you to a third-party website, and every time I've done it, it's
always Q Public.
Q Public.
I guess I've just never, when I'm looking at Cobb, I've never paid close attention.
So, I mean, typical in Georgia with 159 counties, there might be 148 of them that use it. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that every time I've ever gone to a property search on a county website, it takes me to Q Public.
Okay.
And so we didn't name Q Public.
That was my next question.
But what it says is to remove from all property records that are publicly available on any internet website.
Okay. And here's a PSA to anyone who's interested. You can ask Google Maps to blur your house, and they will blur your house. Just PSA to everybody.
You
out
can't
there.
ask Q Public to do that.
Yeah, but Google Maps will blur your house.
If this bill passes, you can blur your name.
All right, we only had this room until 2:00, and we have another bill to hear after this. So
Okay.
I'd like to go ahead and hear from the public now. Thank you, Senator Brass.
Do you need me anymore? Because I've got to go present another bill if that's okay.
If Representative Gaines is good taking over as needed, I'm good with that.
Okay,
All
thank you,
right.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, is Mr. Mark Lincoln still here? Mr. Mark Lincoln signed up. All right, come on up to the podium. And I'll go ahead and announce, too, and I apologize for not saying this at the beginning of the meeting, but Senate Bill 145 has been removed from today's agenda, and we'll hear it tomorrow morning at 9. All right, Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah, hello. My name is Mark Lincoln. I'm a surveyor with the Legislative Committee of the Surveying and Mapping Society of Georgia. And we had some issues with the underlying bill, but we support the substitute.
Very good. We'll appreciate you coming here with your background to voice concerns, but now support. Thank you.
I had a whole lot to say, but now I don't have to say it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Also from the public, we have, is it Larry Ramsey? Mr. Ramsey, come on up. If you would, tell us who you're with. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Larry Ramsey with ACCG. ACCG supports the policy behind this bill and the substitute today. Also wanted to speak in favor of the amendment that Representative Fleming spoke to. Because one of the uncertainties here is what liability might come from you have a frontline employee whose job under this bill is to remove that data. We're hoping to avoid personal liability for that employee if they miss something, if they skip some step. And so the amendment would be clarifying that injunctive relief would be available to force a county or a county employee if they are not performing the duties required by this law, but to avoid personal liability for that employee. GMA also supports this position. And just as you've heard, most counties do use Q Public. They contract with Q Public for the tax assessor records. Not all of them, but most of them. And it's often not clear. I'm a Cobb resident, and you can't tell from the website that you've skipped to Q Public, but it is a separate third-party site. And as Representative Leverett said, deed records are separately maintained by the cooperative authority, the clerk's cooperative authority. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be heard and hear ACCG's position. Thank you.
all right, thank you. We'll take one more question from the committee, and then we'll move on to the motion. Okay, you wave. All right. I believe we had a motion. Is that right? All right. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Now for discussion, over to Representative Fleming.
Mr. Chairman and members, you just heard Larry Ramsey, the attorney with ACCG, describe the amendment. I'll read it to you, but it does exactly what he just said. I've also, Ledge Council prepared this. It's and I've sent a copy over to Stewart and Houston and Representative Leverett, my personal counsel on the committee, to review it. But it simply would add on line 5 where the word request is. After that, it would add to provide for injunctive relief. That's where you put it up in the heading of the bill. And then the actual language goes over on the second page, line 23. You just add this new sentence. Relief for a law enforcement officer whose personally identifiable information is not removed within 30 days of such request shall be limited to injunctive relief against a county employee who had a ministerial duty to remove such personally identifiable information, period.
All right. And to Mr. Morelli, our Ledge Counsel, is the amendment understood? All right. He nods. So we have the Fleming Amendment, which ACCG shows support of. I hear a second. All in favor of the Fleming Amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the amendment carries. Thank you. And we have a question from Representative Gullett.
I actually have a like to move that we amend the bill also, line 24, from September 1st, 2024 to January 1st, 2024.
So speeding this up from September 1st to January 1st.
That's right.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a second on the Gullett amendment
Yeah, 6 months.
to change the word September to January.
Yeah, that's right. September.
All right. So
He's okay.
I'm going to go to Representative Sains.
It's just for clarification. Are we saying we're speeding up the timeline for the form, or getting them, getting the information off the database, or both?
It's for the form. So it says on or before January 1st, 2024, each local government shall provide a form for a law enforcement officer to use when requesting removal of the personal identifiable information, which may include process for verification of employment as a law enforcement officer. Such form shall be made. So it's all about the form.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. You're right. Thank you.
Chairman Leverett.
Curious, and maybe Stuart can refresh my recollection. I can never remember the rules on effective dates. If no effective date is set forth in the bill, is it effective July 1 or is it effective upon signature? July 1? Is it July 1?
Yeah, if no effective date is listed, it goes into effect on July 1, and then
So as of July 1, they'd have to start granting the request, but they wouldn't have to generate the form until January.
yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So we've got the Gullett amendment, changing the word September on line 24 to January. Have a motion and a second on that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The Gullett amendment carries. All right. So we have two amendments to the bill, and we're in a posture to take a full vote on the bill. So all in favor of the amended bill, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say no. All right. The bill carries. Thank you. We have one more bill to hear today, and it's Senate Resolution 214. And Representative Gaines, I'm sorry, all right, Leader Efstration is going to explain this resolution. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Resolution 214 is a joint resolution to confirm the appointment of Judge William S. Duffy, Jr. as chairman of the State Elections Board. Judge Duffy was appointed chairman on June 6th of last year, and confirmation is required by the House and Senate. This joint resolution is the means by which we can set that confirmation process underway, and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, that sounds simple enough. Are there any questions from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this Senate resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we have on today's agenda. We'll come back. What room are we in tomorrow, Molly? We're in this room tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for Senate Bill 145. Thank you.